In the darkness between the stars, where no one dares to look, a new alliance was forming. The outer rim stretched endlessly before Commander Sarah Chen as her flagship. The vanguard cut through the void toward coordinates that shouldn't exist. The nebula clouds ahead writhed like living things, concealing dark space stations that flickered with the cold light of conspiracy. Sarah's jaw tightened as she studied the encrypted transmission that had brought her here. 3 months had passed since humanity's costly victory over the Dominion, 3 months of supposed peace while they rebuilt their shattered fleets. But peace was an illusion when shadows moved in the spaces between worlds. Commander, her communications officer called out, voice tense. We're picking up multiple encrypted signals from the station ahead. They're using old Dominion codes, mixed with something else. The view screen revealed their destination, a massive station hidden within the nebula's embrace, its hull scarred and patched with salvaged materials from a dozen different civilizations. Docking bays opened like hungry mouths, swallowing ships that bore no allegiance to any known power. Sarah felt ice in her veins as she recognized some of those vessels. A sleek cruiser with human military markings sat beside the angular bulk of a Dominion dreadnought. Alien warships of designs she'd never seen before clustered around them like carrion feeders at a feast. Ma'am, her tactical officer whispered, those are our ships. Some of them are our ships. The truth hit her like a plasma blast to the chest. This wasn't just another enemy to face in open battle. This was betrayal, rot eating at the heart of everything they'd fought to protect. In the darkness between the stars, where no one dared to look, a coalition of enemies had shed their old loyalties and now sought to tear apart what humanity had so desperately fought for. The shadows were stirring, and the galaxy was about to face a betrayal it could never have anticipated. Deep within the station's bowels, in a chamber lit only by the glow of holographic displays, the impossible was happening. Former Dominion Admiral Kresh, his cybernetic implants gleaming in the dim light, stood across from General Marcus Weberman Sarah had once called friend, a hero of humanity's darkest hour. Strange bedfellows indeed, Webb said, his voice heavy with bitter resignation. 6 months ago, I'd have put a bullet in your brain without hesitation. Kresh's mechanical laugh was like grinding gears, and I would have vaporized your entire species. Yet here we are, united by a common truth: the galaxy cannot be allowed to stagnate under weak leadership. Around them, representatives of a dozen factions that should have been at each other's throats sat in uneasy alliance. Ancient alien warlords who had ruled sectors for millennia glared at human traitors with barely concealed disgust. Dominion remnants clutched their weapons, expecting betrayal at any moment, and overseeing it all, figures cloaked in shadow whose faces were never quite visible, never quite real. The Dark Council had been manipulating events from behind the scenes for centuries, pulling strings across the galaxy like a spider in its web. Now they saw opportunity in the chaos, a chance to reshape everything according to their vision. The peacekeepers grow stronger every day. One of the council members spoke, their voice a whisper that somehow carried perfect clarity. Chen and her idealists think they can unite the galaxy under their banner of cooperation and mutual respect. They are naive children playing with forces beyond their comprehension. Webb slammed his fist on the table, causing several alien delegates to reach for their weapons. Sarah Chen is many things, but she's not naive. She's dangerous because she actually believes in what she's fighting for. That makes her harder to corrupt, and more necessary to eliminate. Then we are, agreed, Kresh said, his optical sensors sweeping the assembled conspirators. The first phase begins now. We sow division within their ranks, turn their own people against them, and when their unity crumbles, we strike. What happens when enemies who have been at each other's throats for centuries join forces? What if the past is simply a tool to manipulate the present? The Dark Alliance had formed, and the galaxy's stability was the first casualty. The first betrayal came like a knife in the dark, swift and silent and devastating. Sarah was reviewing casualty reports from the latest pirate attacks, well-coordinated strikes against supply convoys carrying critical materials. When the emergency klaxon began wailing throughout the vanguard, her aide burst through the door without ceremony. Commander, we've lost contact with the Meridian Sector defense grid. All stations went dark simultaneously 20 minutes ago. Sarah's blood turned to ice. The Meridian Sector was their most heavily fortified position, guarding the approach to 3 major human colonies. For all stations to fail at once meant only one thing: sabotage, she whispered, then louder, battle stations. All ships to combat readiness. But as her fleet moved to respond, the true scope of the betrayal revealed itself. General Harrison, her most trusted field commander and architect of their defensive strategy, appeared on the main screen. Behind him stood Dominion soldiers in full battle armor, Sarah Harrison said, and she could hear the weight of his decision in every word. I'm sorry you have to see this, but someone has to make the hard choices. Someone has to be strong enough to do what's necessary. James. Sarah's voice cracked. They had served together for 15 years, had saved each other's lives more times than she could count. He had been at her wedding, had held her children when they were born. Why? Because you're weak, he said, and the words cut deeper than any weapon. Because you think peace is possible with these animals. Because you'd rather see humanity slowly strangled by compromise than take the power that's rightfully ours. The transmission cut, and moments later the Meridian defense grids, weapons turned on the colony they were meant to protect. Sarah watched in horror as 3 million people died in the space of an hour, victims of their own defenses. When betrayal comes from within, it strikes deeper than any weapon, and the one who is trusted most is the one who will shatter you first. The shadows were not just enemies from afar, they were the ones standing beside you, sharing your table, knowing your weaknesses. Sarah's hands shook as she gave the order to retreat. Her fleet limped back to their base, while behind them, Harrison's forces consolidated control of an entire sector. The Alliance celebrated their success as they grew bolder, and Sarah realized with growing dread that this was just the beginning. The shadows had infected her own ranks, and she didn't know how deep the rot went. Trust became a luxury Sarah could no longer afford. In the weeks following Harrison's betrayal, 3 more key installations fell to what appeared to be coordinated attacks from within. Each time, officers she had personally promoted and trusted were revealed as traitors. Each time, the knife twisted deeper. She stood now in the secure briefing room deep within Firebase Alpha, humanity's most classified military installation. Around the table sat the handful of people she still believed she could trust, though belief was becoming an increasingly fragile thing. The infiltration is systematic, reported Captain Elena Vasquez, head of military intelligence. They're not just recruiting malcontents and glory seekers, they're targeting specific individuals with access to critical systems. People with family members who've gone missing or loved ones who've died in recent conflicts. Blackmail and leverage, Sarah said grimly. They're building a network of coerced assets alongside the willing traitors. It's more sophisticated than that, added Dr. Marcus Reed, their chief analyst. We've detected communication patterns suggesting coordination at the highest levels of government. This isn't just military, they've infiltrated the civilian administration, the intelligence services, even the merchant guilds. Sarah felt the walls closing in around her. How deep does it go? We don't know, Vasquez admitted. For all we know, someone in this room could be compromised. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah looked around the table at faces she had known for years, people who had bled beside her in the war against the Dominion. How many of them were already lost to the shadows? There's something else, Reed continued, his voice barely above a whisper. We've intercepted fragments of communications suggesting their ultimate target. They're planning something called Operation Nightfall, a simultaneous strike against Earth and the 3 primary colony worlds. If they succeed, he didn't need to finish. Without Earth and the core colonies, human civilization would fragment into 1,000 isolated settlements, easy prey for any enemy with the will to hunt them down. Then we hunt them first, Sarah said, her voice steel-hard with determination. Elena, I want you to handpick a team, people you've served with since before the war, people whose loyalty you'd stake your life on. We're going dark, off the books, off the grid, off the radar. Sarah, if we start conducting unauthorized operations against our own people, we risk triggering a civil war, Dr. Reed warned. We're already in a civil war, Sarah replied, studying the tactical displays showing their dwindling areas of control. The enemy just hasn't told us yet. Trust was a fragile thing. The more you looked for answers, the more questions arose. Who could you trust when everyone around you seemed to have a hidden agenda? The hunt for the shadows had begun, and with it, the stakes had never been higher. The abandoned mining station on Kepler 442c had been dead for 50 years, its corridors filled with nothing but vacuum and the ghosts of corporate ambition. It was the perfect place for a clandestine meeting, which was exactly why Sarah knew it was a trap. She moved through the station's maintenance tunnels with her hand-picked team of 6, all of them people she had known since the academy, people whose backgrounds she had personally verified going back decades. If she couldn't trust them, she couldn't trust anyone. Multiple heat signatures in the central hub, whispered Sergeant Torres, reading his scanner. At least 20 hostiles. but the interference is making it hard to get an exact count. It doesn't matter, Sarah replied. We're not here to fight them all. We just need one of them alive to talk. What they found in the central hub made her blood run cold. The mining station's main chamber had been converted into a command center. Holographic displays showing human military positions across Adosin sectors. And directing the operation was a figure she recognized all too well, Admiral Catherine Stone, the hero of the Battle of Proxima, the woman who had personally led the charge that broke the Dominion's back. She stood at the center of it all, coordinating attacks against her own people with the same tactical brilliance that had once saved humanity. Catherine, Sarah said, stepping into the light with her weapon raised. Tell me this isn't what it looks like. Stone turned slowly, her expression sad but resolute. Hello, Sarah. I was wondering when you'd find us. The word came out as barely a whisper. After everything we've been through, after everything we've built together. Why? Because I've seen the future you're building, Stone replied. A galaxy where humanity kowtows to every alien species that demands a seat at the table. A future where we apologize for our strength and beg forgiveness for our victories. That's not the humanity I fought for. Around them, the displays showed the scope of their operation. Supply depots burning, defense platforms turning their guns on friendly ships, entire sectors falling into chaos as the foundations of human power crumbled from within. This is madness, Sarah said, but even as the words left her mouth, she could see the terrible logic of it. The Dark Alliance hadn't just recruited traitors, they had convinced good people that betrayal was the only path to salvation. Is it? Stone asked. Look at what we've accomplished in just 3 months. We've exposed the weakness at the heart of your Grand Alliance. We've shown the galaxy that humanity's unity is nothing but a facade. And soon, when Operation Nightfall begins, we'll demonstrate that only strength can guarantee survival. The battle that followed was brief and brutal. Stone's people fought with the desperation of true believers, while Sarah's team fought with the fury of the betrayed. When the smoke cleared, half of both groups lay dead or dying on the chamber floor. Sarah knelt beside Stone, who had taken a plasma bolt to the chest and was fading fast. Catherine, please, tell me where they're planning to strike. Tell me when Operation Nightfall begins. Stone smiled, blood on her lips. You still don't understand, do you, Sarah? It's not about when or where. It's about the fact that we've already won. Every friend who betrays you, every ally who turns away, every moment you spend looking over your shoulder, that's our victory. We've made you afraid of your own shadow. Died with those words on her lips, and Sarah realized with growing horror that she was right. The Alliance had achieved something the Dominion never could. They had made humanity afraid of itself. The darkness couldn't be defeated with light. It had to be confronted, from within and from without. But as Sarah looked around at the carnage, at the faces of people she had once called friends, now twisted by death and betrayal, she wondered if the cost of victory was becoming too high. To bear the final confrontation came not in the darkness between stars, but in the heart of human space itself. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Vanguard as her battered fleet approached Earth, watching her homeworld burn. Operation Nightfall had begun 3 days ago with synchronized attacks across the core worlds. Orbital defense platforms had turned. Their weapons planted toward military bases had erupted in civil war as loyalists and traitors tore each other apart. And through it all, the Dark Alliance's forces had swept in like vultures, seizing control of critical infrastructure and government installations. Ma'am, her communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from Earth Defense Command. It's General Webb. Sarah's former friend appeared on the main screen, standing in what had once been the Joint Chiefs briefing room. Behind him, smoke drifted from damaged bulkheads, and she could see bodies in human military uniforms scattered across the floor. Hello, Sarah, Webb said, his voice eerily calm. I'm calling to offer you terms of surrender. Terms, Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. Marcus, look around you. Look what you've done. Earth is burning because of your choices. Earth is burning because weak leaders refuse to make hard decisions, Webb replied. But from these ashes, we'll build something stronger, something pure. Humanity will take its rightful place as the dominant species in this galaxy, and future generations will thank us for having the courage to do what was necessary. On the tactical display, Sarah could see the scope of the disaster. The Alliance controlled Earth's orbital space, 3 of the 5 major colonies, and nearly half of humanity's military assets. The peacekeepers, what was left of them, were scattered and demoralized. But she also saw something else. The cracks in the Alliance itself. Dominion ships were moving to control positions around human worlds, while the mysterious alien warlords had begun making demands for territory. The marriage of convenience was already showing strain. "You've made one critical error, Marcus," Sarah said, signaling to her tactical officer. "You assumed that because we believe in cooperation, we're weak. You assumed that because we prefer peace, we won't fight. And what exactly are you going to do about it?" Webb asked. "You have maybe 30 ships left. I have 300. I'm going to remind you why humanity won the war against the Dominion," Sarah replied. "Not because we were stronger or more ruthless, but because when the chips were down, we stood together across the solar system. Something impossible was happening." Ships began dropping out of hyperspace around Earth, not the scattered remnants of Sarah's fleet, but vessels from a dozen different species, the Altarian Defense Force, whose homeworld humanity had helped liberate, the Centauri Free Companies, who owed their independence to human intervention, even a few Dominion ships, crewed by officers who had grown sick of their own people's endless hunger for conquest. "You see, Marcus," Sarah continued as the tactical display showed hundreds of ships converging on Earth. "While you were busy betraying your friends, I was learning to make new ones. Turns out that when you keep your promises and honor your commitments, people remember. The battle for Earth lasted 18 hours and cost thousands of lives on both sides. When it was over, the Dark Alliance's fleet was broken, its leaders dead or captured, and the orbital platforms were back in loyal hands. But the victory felt hollow as Sarah walked through the wreckage of the Defense Command Center, stepping over bodies of people she had known and served with for years. General Webb was found in his office, a plasma pistol in his hand and a hole through his head. On his desk was a single sheet of paper with words written in his own hand. "I believed I was saving humanity. God forgive me." Sarah picked up the note and felt something break inside her chest. The war may have been won, but the cost would haunt them all. The shadows of betrayal had been defeated, but they had left their mark on everyone they touched. Asterisk. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the Memorial Garden on New Geneva, reading the names carved into the black stone monument. Thousands of them, and civilians, loyalists and traitors alike, all victims of the shadow war that had nearly torn humanity apart. "Commander," a voice said behind her. She turned to find Captain Vasquez approaching, carrying a datapad with the latest intelligence reports. "The trials have concluded," Vasquez reported. 47 officers convicted of treason, ranging from lieutenants to flag rank. Another 112 facing lesser charges for collaboration or dereliction of duty. Asterisk. Sarah nodded, though the numbers felt meaningless. Justice was necessary, but it couldn't bring back the dead or heal the wounds that betrayal had carved into the heart of human civilization. "What about the alien members of the Alliance?" she asked. "Most of the Dominion remnants were killed in the fighting. The warlords have retreated to their home territories, probably to lick their wounds and plan their next move. And the Dark Council... Vasquez shrugged. "They've vanished like smoke. Our analysts think they were never more than a handful of individuals using advanced holograms and AI constructs to create the illusion of a larger organization. So they're still out there, probably. But without their human collaborators, they're back to being shadows, dangerous, but not an existential threat." Sarah walked to the edge of the Memorial Garden, looking out over the city that had been rebuilt in the months since the battle. New construction rose alongside repaired damage, a testament to humanity's resilience. But she could see the scars if she knew where to look. Defensive positions that hadn't been there before the war, surveillance equipment monitoring public spaces, the subtle signs of a society that had learned not to trust completely. "The galaxy is far from safe," she said, more to herself than to Vasquez. "We've shown that we can be turned against each other. Every enemy we face from now on will remember that lesson." "Maybe," Vasquez replied. "But we've also shown that we can overcome that betrayal, that even when the worst happens, there are still people willing to stand up and fight for what's right." Sarah touched one of the names on the monument. Admiral Catherine Stone. Listed among the dead without distinction between hero and traitor. History would have to judge what she had been in the end. Perhaps both. Victory didn't heal wounds, it only left scars. The shadows they had fought were gone, but they had left their mark. Trust would be harder to give and harder to earn. Unity would be more fragile, more precious, because they had seen how easily it could be shattered. And the true enemy, the hunger for power that lived in every thinking being's heart, the willingness to justify any action in service of a greater good, was still out there, watching, waiting for the next opportunity to turn light into darkness. But humanity had faced the shadows and survived. They had looked into the abyss of their own capacity for betrayal and chosen to step back from the edge. That was something worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth living for. The war was over, but the vigilance would never end. In a galaxy where shadows could wear the faces of friends, that was the price of peace. And Sarah Chen, commander of the Peacekeepers, guardian of humanity's conscience, was willing to pay it, for as long as the stars burned in the void between worlds. Someone had to watch for the shadows stirring in the dark.